Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball
with Air Sport. Watch every Munster and Leinster game only on Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland.
So a bit of a Wednesday Night Rugby with a difference. We have two men who haven't featured, I think, before really on Wednesday Night Rugby, and certainly not together, but they do have Andy Farrell in common, which is our thinking. So Mike Ross, who was in recently talking about his new book, welcome back to studio.
Thanks for having me again.
And Tommy Bowe, you're somewhere on the line, hello?
Yeah, Joe, all good. How are things?
Great.
Rossi, good?
Hi Tommy, how are things?
So you two, to get the all very formal here, you two do know each other and have spent a lot of time together.
Well, yeah.
Sadly for Tommy, yes.
Never get to room together, Rossi, thankfully.
You're a loss.
We were always mates.
He just said before you literally before you came on air, Bowe's clothes never fitted me.
Yeah, well, let's not bring up that. It's meant to be a rugby player fit, but there's certainly certain different shapes.
You're discriminatory against props there, Tommy.
We soon, Rossi, we're getting a nice, what sort of 4XL, 3XL?
Yeah, around that range should be good.
Okay, perfect. We're working on it.
Maybe with a built-in corset and other little nice things.
You're looking good. Yeah, of course. We'll see what I can do.
Okay, you can put that on the to-do list. In the meantime, a momentous few days for Irish rugby, really, in that Joe Schmidt is confirmed he's leaving and Andy Farrell is coming in. We will touch on Schmidt's legacy and his era in a moment, but I think we're all fairly familiar with that at this stage. Andy Farrell as a head coach, nobody really is familiar with, but you've both worked with him. I guess, Tommy, your main exposure to Farrell might have been the Lions tour, or did you have certain Ireland camps with him as well?
Yeah, with the last couple of years with Ireland as well. Obviously, the Lions in Australia was my first encounter with him. And listen, I don't think you can be anything but impressed with him. He has a real charisma. He is a true alpha male, a great leader. You can see why throughout his career with Wigan, how successful he was. And then to go into coaching, yeah, he had a great impact. I thought he was really top notch, and to see how far he's gone with Ireland and working under Joe Schmidt, shows the quality of him. And I think in particular, because they would be quite two different characters, I think that they kind of align very well together, which has always obviously worked well with Ireland.
I remember watching the Living with Lions. I think it was from the 2013 series. It may have been from the more recent tour, but either way, the point stands. It was quite striking that Farrell was doing most of the talking, certainly the talking that made the final cut. Anyway, I'm sure Gatland was saying his bits and pieces, but if you had just flicked on casually and didn't know your rugby, you could have easily presumed that Farrell was the head coach, Tommy.
Yeah, he has a great presence about him. I think I read Rory Best speaking about it as well this week, talking about how when he asks you to do something, he has a great way of making it connect with you. He has a great way of showing the sort of passion and what it means to him. And in turn, as a player, it kind of rubs off on you. And, I think that as a leader, I know I was listening to one of the English players saying recently that because all teams have so many leaders now, a captain isn't important. But I can see, with the likes of a Paul O'Connell or Rory Best or an Andy Farrell when he was with England, you can see how they're so successful because somebody who has that sort of figure at the top, who paints a picture of what you all want to follow as a team, makes it so much easier. And I think him going into the head coaching role, it will be very different. It'll be interesting to see how he takes that on board. But certainly my experience with him has been really positive.
Yeah. Mike, you'd have dealt with him more around Carton House, I presume. Andy Farrell, give us your impressions of him as a coach firstly, and then as a personality.
Well, first of all, he's a big guy. He's about 6'3" that way. And interestingly enough, when I was starting off in Harlequins, I played a game against him. I think he was playing for Sarries at the time. Yeah. So, yeah, he's impressive in the flesh, and he's a very clear picture of how he wants things to be done. He's working in the defence. He was, he's very specific about how he wanted you to defend, and if you have that clarity, it makes things easier. Now, how is he going to go as a head coach? Not sure. I mean, if he's anything like he went as a defensive coach, I think could be very good for us. And I suppose everyone has to start somewhere as a head coach. So I think he'll do well. What
was his favourite method of defending, Mike? How did he have you defending, or was it different approaches for different games?
It's quite simple. I mean, he likes us to watch the ball, not the man. Because his philosophy is if you're watching the ball and the ball's lifted, you're all getting off the line at the same time. And a good phrase of his is that attacks are always trying to tell you lies anyway. So watch the ball, get good spacings, get off the line and kill your opposite man.
Rog has been bringing that up actually a good bit lately, where he's been talking about how he's gone to watching the ball as opposed to watching the man. So I presume that's only to a point. Like, you're not to ignore the fact that there's a two-man overlap to your right. You have to be looking at both, I would presume.
Yeah, to a certain degree, but like you need good spacings too. So the death of any defence is a break through the middle. So if they can go around you, good luck to them. But they're not going through the middle.
Okay.
So even if there's a wide overlap, I mean, sometimes there's nothing you can really do about that. And if you spread out wide to try and cover that, then you're going to leave holes in the middle. So if they're going to score, they might as well score on the edge and make the conversion more difficult.
Is that watching the ball, not the man, sounding familiar, Tommy?
Yeah, it's something that he's definitely brought up a lot in meetings. For the likes of myself and maybe the outside backs, it is a bit different, obviously, because as you say, you have an overlap outside you. You could have a winger hugging the touchline. You have to obviously watch the 10 to see where his eyes are looking, where he might kick it. There's a lot of space to look at. But yeah, it's something, it's what Mike said there about manipulating the defence or manipulating the attack. With Joe Schmidt, he is always about trying to set up his plays to try and make it difficult to defend. Where with Andy, he's been on the opposite side of things. He tries to paint a picture that when an out half or 9 looks up, they see one thing, and then all of a sudden when the ball comes in or out of the scrum line out, it's a different picture. So it's trying to keep the attack on their feet as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. So in the same way that Joe Schmidt's talking about animation in attack, Andy Farrell has you guys animated in defence, and there might be a sudden shift in you might look like you're going to do one thing and then he'll shift what you're about to do last minute or late on, kind of thing.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, it was always really, whenever you had I suppose the two teams attacking and defending against each other, when you have the two backlines and Joe was in charge of the attack and Andy was in charge of the defence. I mean, it was honestly a battle every Tuesday and Thursday session, and you could see they could almost take great pride in it, depending whether it was going to be a defensive session or an attack. So they've always been trying to get one up on each other a little bit, which is a kind of a competitive sense, which brings out the best in both sides too. So it's, you never want to be predictable as a team, and certainly with the amount of video analysis that goes on behind the scenes nowadays, the amount of people who are churning through footage, you can see Joe Schmidt is constantly changing the way he attacks, like little subtle passes, little subtle movements in defence, particularly out wide. It's about trying to do that as well, but at the same time not give things away, and hence why you see the likes of Jacob Stockdale. He's come from, say, where Les Kiss was with Ulster at the start, and a type of defence, to then when Andy Farrell, he went into Ireland, it was a bit different. And it's not something you can just pick up straight away. It's something you have to get a feel for, and you can see that those players, particularly Keith Earls, I think Simon Zebo is excellent at as well, that it makes it very hard for a 10 to try and read what those outside backs are doing. Yeah,
it's very interesting insight for us to get. It's almost been creative in defence, which instinctively we wouldn't think that's what you're doing, actually.
Another thing he's big on is your attitude in defence.
Okay.
So he has this thing he wants called bounce. So it's pretty much like bouncing on the balls of your feet, ready for the ball coming. I mean, I never particularly enjoyed defending because most of the lads are quicker than me. So he wanted you to be genuinely excited about getting off the line and smoking someone. So that's a big thing he wants to see in defence. I mean, if you're just standing there kind of like a statue and there's no bounce or eagerness out of you, he'll give you both barrels over that. He wants, so it's psychological, because he wants the attack to look up and see the defence practically vibrating to get at them.
We are streaming here on Facebook as well, so you can get your comments in for the lads, and you can win our Heineken Star Comment of the Week and get some very nice prizes, including some matchday tickets and off the ball goodies. We'll announce this winner on Friday. If you get your comments in now, I'll get a question to the lads. So Joe looks after the attack. I presume, Tommy, Andy Farrell will continue to look after the defence, you would think. Like, there is enough time to specialise in one area and then be broadly the head coach as well.
That's what I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, Joe is a different beast in terms of coaching. Joe pretty much runs everything. And that's why bringing the likes of Andy Farrell in was a big step for him, because Andy is such a presence around the team that to almost hand the defence over to Andy was massive. But I think from Andy's point of view, I'd be very interested to see if he tries to run the defence as well as picking the team, as well as trying to keep an eye on the attack and everything else. So that's going to be something I'm quite interested to see, because that's going to be quite difficult.
What's your sense, Mike?
I think if he continues on Joe's form and brings in good support coaches with him, I think he'll do well. Yeah, I really do. I mean, he has that top level experience, I suppose, with Ireland and England. And he won't have not picked up stuff from Joe along the way, but he'll also have his own take on things. So it depends, which coaching staff is he going to bring in.
That's the question. And is your sense that he'll want to keep as the main defensive man, or he might delegate that?
I don't know. I think he quite enjoys that part of the work, so I don't know if he would delegate that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he might look at... Yeah, sorry, Tommy.
Likes of saw the likes of Declan Kidney was
just lost you, I think, Tommy. Are you there?
Choice of Skype.
Gone. We'll get him back on Skype. Oh, I think you're back. I think you're back. Sorry, yeah, we have you again.
Apologies. You saw the likes of Declan Kidney was almost able to oversee things. You see the likes of Leo Cullen with Leinster oversees things. Eddie Jones, I think, is similar like that as well. So, I mean, is that what Andy Farrell, will he try to step back to oversee and try to delegate to other coaches? That's kind of where I'm interested to see where he goes next.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Would he have been your choice as a matter of interest? I mean, I'm not trying to lure you into saying I wouldn't have picked Farrell, but who were the other contenders? Lancaster and Farrell seem to be the two, really. Were either of you thinking of anybody else? Mike,
I thought Mark McCall might have had a shout, because he's had a highly successful stint with Sarries. So I think his name would have been in the ring for that as well.
Yeah.
Aside from that, yeah, we would have Leo and Lancaster and Andy Farrell.
Yeah.
I don't know if Simon Easterby would throw his hat into the ring for that, but...
Yeah. Tommy, you...
I don't know if it really seemed like it was up for debate. It seemed like it's been quite a seamless transition, that Andy's just going to step in. There's no doubt that he has the respect of the team. The other thing is, as well, is when this World Cup is over, there's going to be a lot of players probably moving on. You're going to have a new spine of the team as well. So it will be definitely a 4-year cycle. So for him to come in, there will be a lot of senior players leaving. So it's going to be a big transition.
The other appointment that has to be made will be the attack coach. And that's where Lancaster's name features again. On the face of it, I mean, it would seem kind of weird, or maybe that's just thinking of ego, and there's no ego really at play here. But for Lancaster to go from 2015 as head coach to in, I suppose, under Farrell. But you would certainly think that his name will cross Andy Farrell's mind, Tommy.
Yeah, I think that he's obviously the one that everybody's talking about at the minute. I suppose the good position that the IRFU are in now is that they've made this decision early, that there's no rush to try and get somebody in. That Andy Farrell, I suppose, has a lot of contacts through playing, through coaching over the years, so I'm sure he won't want to rush into a decision. I mean, I think Stuart Lancaster is a good choice in the sense of what he's doing for Leinster at the minute and how well he's worked with Leo. Yeah. But nobody knows really what the relationship was like, how it would change that Stuart Lancaster's the number 2 and Andy Farrell's number 1, where it was vice versa with England. Obviously, having the 2 English guys coming in charge of an Irish team as well, how would that work? There's a huge amount that I suppose can change it. But I think that, the fact that the decision is made so far out from a World Cup, there's no rush to be made who's going to be brought in at this stage. I think, there's a lot of rugby to be played. There's obviously a World Cup to be aimed at, and then see where we go from there.
Yeah, it was interesting, Mike. Clive Woodward writing about the whole situation, and he was talking about, Farrell and I suppose Lancaster as well. He says, I'm almost filled with despair the way we're missing out on brilliant homegrown coaches. He says, Farrell always been an outstanding individual, great player and a coach of massive potential. It is quite incredible. If we were sitting around here in 2015, we wouldn't have predicted this situation at all. Yeah, and to be fair to Stuart Lancaster, I don't know if he'd be particularly attracted to the job. I think he really enjoys working with young players day in, day out. And would he get that with the Irish job? Probably not. So, at the same time, it is a national coaching role, but I think he's really enjoying what he's doing at the moment. So, because I just see the work he does with like the Leinster Academy lads and the young guys coming through, and you send them up to Joe, and
Joe's making good use of him.
Yeah. There's a tweet in here, more of a question statement kind of thing. Lads, do we not remember the leaky defence over the last couple of years? It appears to be have been rectified in November, but we do have short memories. Is that a fair question? Like, certainly there was talk of Ireland being narrow at times over the last number of years, Mike.
Yeah, look, that's kind of above my pay grade, so I'll kind of shift that back to Tommy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, everybody's talked about the New Zealand game, how they didn't concede a try, but I mean, the week before that, they played against Argentina. Ireland had 1 line break for them and 6 against them. Yeah. So it is very easy to say that Ireland, of course, got up for that big game against the All Blacks, but the week before that, they probably were a little bit off. So again, that's why I wonder if, with the pressure of trying to shore up our defence, plus trying to be head coach for Andy, how that's going to work, whether he'll try and step back and bring somebody else in for that.
Yeah, especially when it's your first job. I mean, there must be just that sense where he does know what it entails, having worked so closely alongside Schmidt and Lancaster, but then you never fully quite know until you actually do it.
Exactly. I mean, he has a great presence about him. Yeah. He is a really influential guy. I know the players speak highly of him. He gets on really well with the other coaches. But becoming a head coach, I've seen it. So many players are kind of assistant coaches who go in to become a head coach. It is a different kettle of fish. You're dealing with man management, you're picking teams, you're dealing with provincial coaches. I mean, from Joe's point of view, the reason he's so world class is that the work that he puts in, the effort that he makes to get in touch with people, players who aren't even in the extended squad. There's a huge amount to it. So it's going to be a massive challenge for Andy. But I think when he was with England, he actually had a bit more responsibility than he did with Ireland. So I suppose he does have a bit of experience in that.
Yeah, it's one of those time is going to tell situations, so we'll just have to see how it all plays out and who he appoints. The other interesting thing, Mike, something that is in your pay grade certainly, is that Greg Feek will be absolutely stepping away. A bit of double jobbing for the last while. So what has Feek done with the scrum? How highly do you rate him? Give us a sense of what we're losing here in Greg Feek departing.
I rate him very highly. I think I first met Greg when he came into Leinster around 2010. And we didn't have a scrum coach. Okay, so straight away that was a big step up in my eyes. And I suppose I had particular ideas about scrummaging before then, and he really forced me to step back and take a look at what we were doing and why we were doing it, and could we do it a better way. He's very detail oriented, a bit like Joe. So he'll spend a few hours going over scrums and looking. He'll have a camera above the scrum so you can see how it locks and the back five are linking up. And I'll tell you a story that kind of shows his attention to detail. So when we were playing England, and Feeky noticed that Joe Marler on his bind would move his head slightly to the right, and he told me this. He said, "Look, if you put your head across there, it'll block him, and you won't be able to swing round, and it'll depower him." Okay, so I did that, and it worked an absolute treat. And this is because he was looking at video above and noticed it. It was just slight. So Joe just bring his head out to the left a bit, and I just put my head across when he did that, and then he couldn't attack me the way he liked to. So he'll be a big loss, but he was responsible for a lot of knowledge sharing around the provinces. There would be kind of scrum forums. I know this because I went to a couple of them, where scrum coaches would from all over the provinces get together and share knowledge and drills, and it's no accident that we have a glut of props coming through at the moment.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I didn't realise all that was going on. And is there an Irish type scrum? We talked a while back about the Argentinian style of scrum, and I presume New Zealand have a certain identity. Is there an Irish identity that is at Irish level, and Leinster and Munster and Connacht and Ulster? Are they all working off the same template? Could you fit into any scrum very quickly, or is it different around the provinces and at Ireland again?
There'll be slight differences. So Ireland have a kind of New Zealand style scrum at the moment because of Feeky's influence. So squares, we scrummage very straight. We don't tend to go off on different angles. Everything's clean, one strong line. Whereas, say, Munster and Leinster might try and create a 3-on-2 in the front row more often than not. I mean, I think when you watch Munster and Leinster, you saw scrum go left to right. That was them seeking to try and create a 3-on-2 and splinter off and get the penalty. So There are slight differences, but I think most props will be able to slot into their into different provinces fairly seamlessly.
And how does the Irish scrum rank worldwide now amongst the very best teams? We saw what it did in New Zealand, obviously, the other weekend, where incredibly dominant. Where is it in world standards for you?
Top 3 at least. I mean, like, I'm trying to think of who dominate them currently, and England probably not. New Zealand, we saw that at the weekend. Argentina got no change out whatsoever.
Yeah.
France, probably I wouldn't think so. So yeah, I think we're definitely up in the very best scrums at the moment. I think the stats reflect that in terms of how much of our own ball we're winning and how much we're losing, and the quality of the ball that's coming off the scrum too. So it's no good if the number 8 is like trying to fish it out from a backpedaling scrum.
Yes.
Often it's just there on a plate for the scrum half to whip it out.
Tommy, you never made it to any of the scrum forums. Were you busy that weekend?
No, I missed that, thankfully. No, listen, scrum platform, I think our Ireland set piece in particular is so important for this team that Joe puts a huge amount of emphasis in it, particularly in the scrum, because it's all about attacking off a scrum. There's no better platform than attacking off a scrum. And I think from Ireland's point of view, we attack pretty much off the basis of more scrums than any other team. You know, it's something I know Joe prided himself on a few years ago. I think it's pretty much the same. And certainly when you saw Ireland scrum against the likes of Argentina, was just incredible. You know, to think that Tadhg Furlong didn't make it as nominated for one of the world players, you know, for the World Player of the Year. I wouldn't normally be advocating props to be getting in there, but I mean, I think that he really had stand out this year.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people felt that. You've mentioned Joe a few times then, Tommy, so you worked with Schmidt for a number of years. Mike was in a while back talking about his new book, and he's effusive in his praise of Joe Schmidt. I mean, he literally says in the book, I love Joe Schmidt, and unashamedly. Give us your experience of working with him, why he's so good. I know it's difficult to boil it down to any 1 or 2 or 3 things.
I think he makes it relatively easy for people to come in, slot in and out of the system that he wants. He puts a huge amount of emphasis on the game plan and what way he wants to play. It goes up at the start of the week. You know, whether you're in for your first time getting into Ireland camp or your 50th time, you are expected to know that inside out. And if you don't know it, you need to go and talk to somebody who does know it. And when it comes to getting on the pitch, whether it be a walk through in the car park to on the pitch to wherever, if you don't know it, you know, you can't be expecting to get an opportunity at the weekend. So he expects the players to put in a huge amount of effort off the pitch. I think we train probably less than most other teams do on the pitch because of the effort that he expects, you know, whether it be on video work, on knowing your detail and what he expects of you. So, you know, there's no surprise that when he makes changes, players are able to just slot in so seamlessly because they know exactly what's expected of them. They're not expected to pull a rabbit out of a hat. But if they do their job and do it efficiently, you know, the system will work, and that's proved in the years gone by.
It's I mean, look, nobody wants Joe Schmidt to go. That much is clear, I think, Mike. And I saw Rory Best was talking about what Schmidt's legacy will be. And Best was making the point that once the trophies have all been packed away, the real legacy will be the coaches he leaves behind, the likes of, he mentioned Farrell and Easterby and Richie Murphy or Leo Cullen, coaches who've been exposed to Joe and how he does things. And I accept that. But a big part of me still just thinks that there is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% margin that having Schmidt for a given game, analysing the opposition, gives you, that it almost feels a bit irreplaceable. And obviously I think everybody in Irish Rugby is hoping that the system is so brilliantly in place now that it can cope with Schmidt's loss. But a big part of me just thinks when it comes to games like the All Black game, like the real kind of top level games, that with Schmidt not there, we are going to lose something. We are going to go a bit backwards, as good as we might hope Andy Farrell could be. What's your sense of that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I suppose Joe wasn't always as good as he is today, you know, so he would have had to learn his trade and his craft like anyone else.
Yeah.
Yes, we won't have anyone quite like him, but you never know what's going to come out. I mean, you might have someone who's better than Joe, because they got an opportunity and they developed and learned as a coach. But right now, Yeah, you probably will lose a small bit, but you don't know what you're going to uncover as a result of that.
Yeah, it's hard to put it in any quantitative terms, Tommy. I mean, you can't say it's worth X number of points a game, but you certainly see things like the Stockdale try against the All Blacks, and you just feel that was Schmidt and his fingerprints ultimately.
Yeah, I think that, listen, there's going to be a hangover, absolutely, when Joe leaves. But not just because of Joe leaving. As I mentioned earlier, there will be players who will probably step away as well, senior players who've been there for a long time. But you look at Leinster, I mean, Joe stepped away from Leinster. They went through a bit of a rocky patch, but there is life after Joe. And I still think that the foundations that he left there are still there, and they're still, one of the big reasons Leinster are still so strong when it comes to the professionalism from, that he set such a standard with the senior players that the young guys follow. And I think that even in Leinster, you can see the young guys like Gary Ringrose, Josh van der Fleer coming through, that they're such professionals, and that comes from the sort of impact that Joe and what he expected from them. So there's no doubt about it. He has laid the foundations that will be there for a long time.
Yeah, I guess the Leinster example is the one that would give everybody hope. I wanted to ask you about Jacob Stockdale. I just saw the London Times did their Lions team for the autumn, and I was curious to see who they'd pick. So basically, if you didn't play in autumn, you weren't eligible, was their point. And they had Jacob Stockdale in at number 11. It's funny, I was watching The End Game was on again. I'm sure you probably got a few tweets. It was on recently on RTE, your documentary about your final year and your retirement. And there's a few shots of you on the bench towards the end, and fresh-faced Jacob Stockdale kind of doing his thing. So I guess you saw him emerge and blossom at close quarters. Are you amazed he's kind of sitting here, 12 tries in something like 12 or 13 test matches, or did you have this level of hope for him?
No, I mean, I think that he's surprised himself. I don't think, to have the strike rate that he's had, there's no doubt about it. He should be in a Lions team. I mean, he probably would be in a world team with the strike rate that he's had. But it doesn't surprise me. And, people see what he did in the Six Nations last year, but I have seen him, over the last year and a half with Ulster as well, how he worked so well in tandem with Charles Piatow last year, and even the season before that, before he broke into Ireland. I was on the bench at the end of that season behind him as well. Right. So I've definitely seen him come through. The confidence that he has and how he's able to, he doesn't get involved a huge amount in the game, but when he does get the ball, the impact that he has, even the first few minutes against Argentina, his first two carries were, he made 15 and 20 yards almost. So he is he's a serious talent, but he's still so young too. Yeah. So I mean, it's about nurturing him, bringing him through. He gets a tough time because of his defence, but as I mentioned earlier, going into a different defensive system doesn't just happen overnight too. So that's something that will come over time. He's growing into the game. He's growing. To have the strike rate that he has been incredible, and to have the confidence in that New Zealand game, to have that his first chip, charged down by Kieran Reid. They almost went under the post and scored. Thankfully, Reid dropped it. But a lot of players at that age would go into their shell. But for him to get the ball again and to still see the space to go for it, I think that shows the confidence of young players that are coming through. It's a bit like Jordan Larmour as well. He's somebody who just seems to be unflappable. They see the space, they back themselves. And it's a great way to be, for those outside backs.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kind of a tough question to ask, but I guess you might be the best person really to ask it. I haven't seen him so close for longer than most of us. There was this nagging sense during the Six Nations when you watched him do historic things, record-breaking things, that obviously this can't happen every year. This is not going to be his or anyone's norm. Yeah. And so I did find myself wondering as the Six Nations progressed, what's going to be a norm for Stockdale over the next 5-10 years? Because this, last year could turn out to be his greatest ever season, the greatest 18 months of his career. Consistently over the next 5-6 years, is he going to be a guy who's going to be a starting winger for Ireland, who's going to come in with, 20, 30 tries across his career? Would they be the expectations you'd have for him now?
I mean, I think to have another year like he had last year, or even to get, to try and do that over a couple of years is very difficult. Yeah. But I think that he has set the standard for himself. He's continued it on this year. I think he had pretty much 2 games at the start of the season with Ulster, or 3 games, scored 2 tries. he has an incredible strike rate. And for me as a player, I always got this. I didn't score many wonder tries, but I always got this, that I was in the right place at the right time, a bit of a poacher. And towards the end of my career, I found out that I was always the guy picking him up off the ground. So he would always score, and I was always the guy picking him up off the ground, patting him on the back. And it showed me that, as my career went on, I became that split second slower, or not that split second slower to react. And he always was that little step ahead of me. And that's something that doesn't get a huge amount of credit. That's something that, it's the quickness in thought, the quickness to be alert, to be there ahead of the defenders, ahead of your own teammates. That's what makes a finisher.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because I've seen him talked about it as maybe just a finisher, or mainly just a finisher recently, as if that's not the hardest thing in the game to do.
Exactly. It's natural to him, which is a good way to be.
Yeah. By the way, that Lions team generally in the Times, they had Hogg at fullback. If it was going to happen tomorrow, effectively, is the point. Johnny May was 14. They had Jonathan Davies and Owen Farrell at 13 and 12. Stockdale 11. Johnny Sexton 10. Interestingly, Kieran Marmion was their number 9. They had Cian Healy and Tyg Furlong either side of Ken Owens. They had James Ryan as the second row. Alan Wynne-Jones alongside him. No Peter O'Mahony.
Heresy.
Which is heresy, yes. Maro Itoje, Tipperick and Mark Wilson. So no Irishman in
They put Itoje at 6, did they?
Back row. They put Itoje at 6, yeah. In their explanation, they appreciated that not having Peter O'Mahony in there was heresy, but they insisted on having Itoje in. So there you go. Not worth dwelling on too much, but it was interesting to see Stockdale was in there. There's provincial rugby back at the weekend. It'll be on Air Sport. Tommy, you're in the hot seat now, and our coverage here is brought to you by Air Sport as well, the home of rugby in Ireland. So we've got Munster against Edinburgh on the Friday night. We have Connacht away to the Cheetahs on Saturday. Ulster at home to Cardiff on Saturday, and Dragons at home to Leinster on the Saturday as well at 5:15. So we've thrown them all up there on the screen. How are you enjoying the hot seat?
Yeah, loving it. It's been, as you know, it's certainly a challenge.
It's easy. What are you talking about?
Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
no. I hear you. It is a challenge.
But no, listen, it's been fantastic for me. It gives me a whole new adrenaline buzz, live television, having the feedback in the ear, trying to keep Donncha O'Callaghan under wraps, and also getting to enjoy the matches. It's been brilliant. Yeah, really, really enjoying it, and also getting to watch some great rugby too. So, yeah, good.
What's the hardest part of it as a matter of interest? I'll have this conversation with you off air maybe sometime. What's the trickiest part?
Listen, I find the rugby chats are great.
Yeah.
I can talk rugby all day long and having a conversation. It's the throws to breaks, throws to interviews. And I suppose because you're working from matches coming in from South Africa, from Italy, Scotland, Wales, it doesn't always go to plan. Everything, you have your running order and things change up all the time. So it's trying to filter out the voices in your ear, figure out when's the right time to throw, and also trying not to muddle up my words. But it's been a great challenge.
Yeah. You watching, Mike?
Of course, yeah. And
do you want to give Tommy any supportive words there?
no, he's a brave man. Maybe you can throw some shirts out to Lukey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Lukey now he's had a tough time with the last few weeks.
Yeah, that's an unforgiving audience is the other aspect of things, I suppose.
Yeah, it is. That's something to definitely learn when you hit the television. Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, thanks so much for joining us. Much appreciated. We did want to get an insight into Andy Farrell from you both, so I think we've got that. So Tommy Bowe and in studio Mike Ross. Thanks very much, lads.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
See you, Rossi.
Wednesday night rugby on Off the Ball.
With Air Sport. Watch every Munster and Leinster game only on Air Sport, the home of rugby in Ireland.